Before I retired, I wrote down everything I did. Not the job title, not the bullet points from HR. I mean the real work, the stuff that keeps you awake at 3:11 a.m., the handshake agreements that outlive managers, the passwords people swear don't exist, and then call you about during a fire drill. I didn't do it to be dramatic. I did it because I was tired of being the ghost that held up the ceiling. 28 years in operations at a mid-sized company that pretends it's a startup when it wants forgiveness, and a legacy brand when it wants respect. My name never made it onto the wins slide. People clapped for growth and innovation. I carried the mop and the fuse box. I was the one who knew the elevator stops between floors if the freight sensor hasn't reset since 2018. I was the one who texts the facilities vendor at 5:07 a.m. every first Monday because the building HVAC preheat bug wakes up cranky after month-end close. I was the one who can get a human at the bank in under 2 minutes because the human's kid goes to school with my nephew, and I sent them a space heater during the blackout. It started like this. My doctor tapped the chart, said the word event, and then softened it with warning. My wife didn't say, please retire. She said, I'd like to recognize you when you get home. I nodded. I gave the company 90 days, more than they deserved, and exactly what my conscience needed. If I was going to leave, I'd leave clean. No hero sprint, no booby traps, just clarity. So I opened a blank document and typed a title I never showed anyone. The list. I wrote, daily 5:30 a.m. Check night batch success. If failed, on job 42, call Priya. Cell prefers text first. 5:36 a.m. If job 42 passed but payload time. 19 on next. Notify accounting of slow downstream. Use subject heads up, not a blocker, to prevent panic. I wrote, office coffee machines. Oh, the third floor unit backflushes too aggressively if water hardness tosiscus 8 GPG. Swap the cartridges every 19 days, not 30. The invoice still says 30. Change the reminder in your head. I wrote, if Mike from sales asks for a quick report, ask which client. If he says Grayfield, say no unless legal is looped. There's an NDA rider he forgets every single time. At first it felt petty, like I was confessing to witchcraft, but the more I typed, the more it stopped being about me and started looking like a map of a city nobody admits they live in, the unspoken dependencies, the undocumented workarounds, the favors owed, the double-booked responsibilities camouflaged under one job title because it was cheaper. I didn't comment on any of that. I just wrote cause, effect, contact, tone. I added the vendor truths. Power serve. If you open a ticket online, you'll die before you get a callback. Text Victor. Don't use emojis. Always include the serial number in the first line. He'll respond within 12 minutes, unless his kid has a game. I added the human truths. Janine is brilliant, but freezes if you say, I need this ASAP. Say, can you do the first 10% so I can check direction? She'll deliver the whole thing by lunch. I added the legal truths. Quarterly disclosures are due on the 14th, unless the 14th is a Friday. Then it's the 13th by 4:59 p.m. Not FICAS. Fulgur 59. The portal timestamps UTC -4. Don't get cute. I did the ugly parts too. Back entrance badge reader is flaky in heat. If it fails, security prop the side door with a folded mat. They pretend not to. That is a fire code violation. Call me first, then call them. Order matters. People matter. If the CFO asks how long to temp the reconciliation, answer in hours, not days. He hears days as negotiable. Hours make him sit down. The file grew. I cross-referenced it. I added screenshots, then deleted the screenshots and wrote in words in case someone printed it. I recorded exactly where the one weird manual step lives inside the pretty automation that marketing loves to photograph. I put in the sentence I wanted someone to tell me in my own second week. There is no automation. There is you, your patience, and a process that behaves if you treat it like a person and not like a switch. Meanwhile, HR sent me the offboarding checklist with cartoon icons. Return laptop. Schedule exit interview. Share institutional knowledge. My boss, who is a decent PowerPoint disguised as a person, said just jot down the basics. We hired your replacement already. He's sharp. You'll be a mentor for a week and then free as a bird. I said, we should book 2 weeks for shadowing. He smiled like that was adorable. Buddy, it's operations, not brain surgery. The building doesn't care about your metaphors. The building remembers. It remembers the time we took the server floor off generator because the diesel delivery was late, and I drove to a farm supply store to buy diesel in 5-gallon cans because the supplier doesn't do partials. It remembers the winter the sprinkler line froze on a Sunday, and I stood on a ladder at 6 a.m. with a hairdryer because the plumber wouldn't cross town for less than an emergency call rate. That would have blown our budget, and my boss would have asked me why I didn't think ahead. The building remembers that when the alarm panel throws a low battery code, it's lying, and what it really means is Zone 7 likes attention. I didn't write poetry. I wrote instructions. If union roster change hits on the same day as payroll cutoff, pause the roster until the cutoff processes. The system lets you do both. The system is wrong. I didn't write grievances. I wrote timelines. 2019, 2024, headcount requests denied Q4 each year, overtime unbudgeted, then normalized. I didn't write threats. I wrote numbers. On day 51, I printed a hard copy, not because I don't trust the cloud, but because I don't trust the people who forget. The cloud has permissions. I put the stack into a black binder, the kind auditors like. On the cover, I slid a plain sheet. Operations Continuity. Handoff Notes. I kept the real title to myself. The list is mine. The notes are a gift. I told my wife that night I'd be handing it over next week. She asked if I felt weird, like cutting my own parachute. I said it felt like putting the parachute on someone else and labeling the straps in glow-in-the-dark tape. The following morning, I did my rounds the way I always do, quietly before anyone else. I cleared 4 minor errors that would have been headlines by noon. I left no fingerprints. I checked the conference room. HR had set out bottled water and the good pens as if we were performing trust, not transferring it. They'd booked a 2-hour slot, 10 to 12. Welcome, new team member, the calendar said, a smiley face in the description. Of course. At 9:47, my boss poked his head in. You ready? I tapped the binder. It's all here. He didn't look at it. Great energy. At 9:58, HR floated in with their clipboard and brittle optimism. At 10:02, the door opened and my replacement walked in. Pressed shirt, bright grin, hand extended. The exact age I was when I thought competence would be rewarded without receipts. I stood, shook his hand, and slid the binder across the table. Everything you'll need, I said, and when he smiled, I said it again, slower, like a promise. Everything. He arrived early on his second day, 15 minutes before the official start, which already made him better than most who'd ever tried shadowing me. He had that first week energy, crisp shirt, expensive shoes that squeaked on the vinyl, and a leather notebook he clearly bought for this new chapter of his life. Morning, I said. Morning, he replied, too bright. Ready to get me up to speed? I nodded once and opened the binder. We'll go line by line. You'll ask questions. We'll see how much fits in one day. He laughed. I'll pick it up quick. I've done ops before. I almost smiled. Everyone says that. By 8:10 a.m., I'd already tested his patience. The first section was critical routines, stuff he thought would be automated. When I showed him the old terminal window running a batch job from 2007, he blinked. That's still live? Yeah. Nobody ever migrated it. If it stops, the billing queue dies, and you'll have 1,200 clients without invoices. He frowned. Can't we just rebuild it in something modern? Sure, I said. Just convince finance to give you a migration budget in 6 months. In the meantime, this is the button you press if it stalls. He stared at the blinking cursor like it was haunted. By 8:35, he'd written down 6 things that shouldn't exist. By 9, he'd stopped writing altogether. I took him through the vendor network. PowerServe handles our data backbone. They'll tell you they have 24/7 support. That's a lie. You text Victor, this is his number. No emojis. If you use an emoji, he won't answer. He looked confused. Why? Long story involving a former CIO and a poorly timed thumbs up. Next, the security gate logs. You'll get daily reports saying no issues. Ignore them. The side door sticks if humidity is above 80%. You'll need to manually check the latch or the alarm will trigger and facilities will blame you. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. That's not my department. It is now. At 10 mice, we hit finance and legal workflows. That was when his voice cracked. Wait, this is all you? Yes. But these are separate divisions. They are on paper. He flipped pages faster, the color draining from his face as he realized half the company's compliance load flowed through my desk, disguised as routine maintenance. I watched him count tasks silently, lips moving. When he reached 48, he stopped. Why hasn't anyone? Because if you fix it, you admit it's broken, I said. Around noon, HR stopped by with sandwiches and that brittle tone reserved for team building. My replacement smiled weakly. I noticed he hadn't touched his notebook in an hour. You doing okay? HR chirped. Yeah, he lied. After lunch, we tackled incident response. I showed him the alert phone, an ancient brick with cracked casing. Who else gets these alerts? He asked. Nobody. Just you. That can't be right. It's right. Welcome to the job. He scrolled through the messages, eyes widening at timestamps. 2:47 a.m., 3:12 a.m., 4:26 a.m. He looked up slowly. You actually answer these? Everyone? If you don't, the backup system fails and payroll misses direct deposit. He swallowed. How often does that happen? Often enough that I stopped setting an alarm years ago. By 2 bouts, the cheerful confidence had evaporated. Sweat darkened the collar of his perfect shirt. We went downstairs to the server room. I pointed at the unlabeled breaker box. If there's a power spike, you flip this one. Not that one. That one cuts the security feed and legal panics. He hesitated. Why isn't it labeled? Because when we tried, the adhesive melted off from the heat. He didn't laugh. At 3:30, I let him handle his first minor issue. The invoice upload queue was frozen. He clicked where he shouldn't, and the system spat out a fatal error. I leaned over his shoulder, typed 4 commands, and resurrected the queue. He stared. How did you know that? I made the bug in 2012. The patch failed, so I learned to live with it. He blinked. You... what? Don't worry, it's a stable. Mostly. By 4... He looked like he'd aged 5 years. You okay? I asked. He laughed dryly. This is insane. One person can't possibly do all this. I agree. He gave me a look, half disbelief, half desperation. Then why didn't you tell them? I did. Every quarter. It's in the records. He glanced at the binder again, flipping back to the front page. The sheer volume hit him like a physical weight. He read the first line out loud. Operations continuity. Handoff notes. You really meant everything, huh? I did. He exhaled, long and slow. At 4:52, we were in the middle of the end-of-day checks, when he set down the binder and said quietly, I can't do this. You'll learn. He shook his head. No, I won't. I can't. No human being can handle this load. He stood, eyes glazed, and pushed the chair back with a scrape, loud enough to make the nearby cubicles pause. HR, hearing the commotion, peeked in. Everything okay? My replacement laughed once. Short, bitter, honest. You should read the list, he said. You people have no idea what this man's been doing. Then he handed me his ID badge. I'm sorry. I thought I was good at my job. He walked out without waiting for a reply. The silence afterward was heavier than any argument. HR stared, mouth open. My boss looked like someone had unplugged him. Finally, he said, He'll come around. He won't, I said, but I'll finish my notice as promised. I gathered the binder, slid it back into my drawer, and locked it. "Same time tomorrow?" I asked. Nobody answered. When I left that night, the office was darker than usual. For the first time in years, I didn't check my phone before bed. But at 2:43 a.m., it buzzed anyway. Alert. Job 42 failed. I looked at the screen for a long minute, then turned it face down on the nightstand and let it ring. When I came in the next morning, they were already waiting for me. 3 people, HR, my boss, and someone I hadn't seen before. Sharp suit, polished shoes, eyes like an auditor. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't have to. I knew the type. Risk management, the company's version of a cleanup crew. "Morning," I said, hanging my coat. My boss cleared his throat. "So, yesterday was unfortunate. Depends on your definition." He gave a dry chuckle that fooled no one. HR slid a form across the table. "We just need to document that he, chose to resign of his own accord." I looked at the form, then at her. "You're worried he might file something?" "Just a precaution." I nodded slowly. "You should add a clause that says he resigned after reading the handover binder. That's an important distinction." The auditor's pen froze midair. By lunch, word had spread. The new guy had lasted 1 day. People were peeking over cubicles, whispering, waiting for me to explain what I'd done to scare him off. I didn't. I kept working. But around 1 box, my inbox lit up with a calendar invite. Emergency Operations Review, 2:30 p.m., Conference Room B. That's corporate language for we're looking for someone to blame. I showed up early, binder in hand. They were already there. The CFO, legal counsel, HR director, and my boss, pretending to be relaxed. "All right," the CFO said, adjusting his cufflinks. "Let's talk about this list." "Binder," I corrected. He forced a smile. "Right, binder." They passed it around like it was radioactive. I watched each expression shift. Amusement, confusion, then quiet alarm. The legal counsel stopped flipping pages halfway through. "This can't all be one position," she said. "It has been since 2018, I replied. "Why didn't you raise this formally?" "I did. Every quarter. I can forward the emails if you'd like." The room went still. My boss shifted in his seat. "That's not entirely accurate." I pulled a printed timeline from my folder and laid it on the table. Each row had a date, subject line, and response. Subject: staffing concern, recurring overtime. Response: budget freeze, revisit next quarter. Dozens of entries. Years of them. The lawyer adjusted her glasses. "You kept records." "I keep everything." The auditor finally spoke for the first time. "You said this binder represents the total daily workload?" "Yes, and the risk points." He tapped a page. "This line here. Single point of failure. Payroll transmission. What happens if you don't manually check it? Missed deposits, fines, union breach, maybe a lawsuit." He blinked. "And you're the only one who knows the procedure?" "Correct." He scribbled something. "Then your company's been violating redundancy protocol for 5 consecutive years." Nobody spoke after that. An hour later, the CFO asked me, too casually, if I'd consider staying a few more months to help restructure. "I'm retiring," I said. "Maybe just part-time? Consulting? We can negotiate a rate." I smiled politely. "You can't afford me now." He tried again. "At least share the master file electronically." "I already did. It's in the shared drive." He frowned. "We can't access it." "I know. It's read-only." That evening, I received an email from HR. "As part of your transition, please delete all personal files from your work drive." I replied with one line, "There are no personal files. Everything on that drive belongs to you." 2 hours later, another email arrived, this one from legal. "Could you confirm the authenticity of the attached documentation?" Attached was my entire email archive of staffing requests and incident logs. Forwarded by the auditor, I confirmed. By the next morning, the ripple had reached the board. My boss's face was pale when he passed me in the hallway. He didn't stop to talk. They called another meeting, bigger this time. Conference room A. 10 people, half of them unfamiliar. Insurance rep, compliance officer, someone from IT security. The compliance officer spoke first. We've reviewed the operational documentation. This role violates internal labor policies and federal exposure limits. The insurance rep followed. The single point risk here voids your coverage for certain incidents. The CFO blinked. Coverage? She nodded. If your key operator is unavailable and there's no certified backup, our liability clause is null. You've effectively been uninsured for system failures since 2020. The color drained from his face. My boss started to say something, but legal raised a hand. Please don't. Anything you say might be discoverable later. I sat quietly, watching the empire of denial collapse in slow motion. The compliance officer turned to me. Mr. Reeves, is there a recommended course of action? Yes, I said. Hire 3 people. Split the duties. Infrastructure, vendor, compliance. Train them properly. Document everything. And don't ever tell them it's a one-person job. The CFO leaned forward. Can you draft that plan? I already had. I slid a second folder across the table. Neatly tabbed, color-coded, dated. He opened it and stared. You've been preparing this? For 3 years. That night, I stayed late. The building was empty except for the janitor and the hum of the servers. I walked the floor one last time, checked the doors, glanced at the blinking green lights, the familiar heartbeat of the place. On my desk sat the binder, closed, heavy. My phone buzzed once, a message from my wife. Everything okay? Almost, I typed back. Then I opened a blank email to the board. Subject line, Final Continuity Report. In the body, I wrote, attached are operational risk assessments, documented correspondence, and recommendations for role restructuring. Please confirm receipt before my final day. This concludes my transition responsibilities. I hit send, shut off the lights, and walked out. The next morning, the building buzzed with whispers. The CFO hadn't shown up. My boss's office door was closed, permanently from the sound of it. HR was reviewing leadership adjustments. When I passed the reception desk, the new schedule was already posted. 3 open roles under operations. It wasn't vindictive satisfaction I felt, just relief, like finally exhaling after years underwater. That afternoon, the auditor stopped by my cubicle. They're implementing your plan, he said. The board wants to thank you for your diligence. I smiled faintly. They don't need to. Just pay people what they're worth. He nodded, then lowered his voice. You kept them out of real trouble. Most people wouldn't bother. I shrugged. Most people don't stay long enough to care. He held my gaze for a moment, then offered his hand. Enjoy retirement, Mr. Reeves. You earned it. When he left, I looked at the empty inbox, the silent phone, the blinking cursor on my screen. For the first time in 28 years, I had nothing to fix. And that's when it hit me. Not pride, not anger, just quiet clarity. Tomorrow they'd survive without me. But they'd never forget why they had to. I came in early on my final Friday. Not out of duty. Habit. The kind of habit that stays with you like muscle memory. The building was quiet. Too quiet. The way it always was before the day began pretending to be normal. I poured the last bad cup of coffee I'd ever make here and waited for the 9 a.m. meeting that would end 28 years of my life. By 8:45, my badge was already in my pocket. My inbox was clean. I'd set up the auto response the night before. This account is no longer monitored. Please contact operations support. 3 words I never thought would exist in this company. Operations support. 3 new hires had started that week. 1 for infrastructure, 1 for compliance, 1 for vendor management. 3 people to do what I'd done alone. I walked past their cubicles. They were setting up monitors, plugging in cables, laughing nervously. The vendor manager, a kid with a steady voice, nodded at me. You're the legend, right? He said. I'm the ghost, I corrected. You'll do fine. The final meeting started with all the expected choreography. The CFO wasn't there. Rumor said he'd been reassigned. My boss sat 3 chairs away from the new interim director, a woman flown in from another branch. Legal and HR were present too, just in case anyone decided to have feelings. The director smiled politely. Before we begin, Mr. Reeves, I just want to acknowledge your years of service. Your documentation was thorough. Thank you, I said. She opened a folder. The board approved your restructuring proposal. The roles have been budgeted. Insurance reinstated our coverage as of last night. She slid a printed email across the table. They also wanted me to extend a consulting offer. 6 months, flexible rate. You'd be free to work remotely. I looked at it for a long moment. No, I said quietly. Her eyebrows rose. May I ask why? Because you don't need me anymore, I said. That was the point. HR cleared her throat. You sure you don't want to reconsider? We can add a no. The word landed clean, solid, the kind of no that doesn't echo because it doesn't need to. The rest of the meeting dissolved into logistics, asset returns, signatures, formal goodbyes. The director thanked me again using phrases like institutional knowledge and dedicated stewardship. They never say we overworked you to the edge of collapse. That kind of truth doesn't fit in HR templates. At 10:56, I stood, shook hands, and handed over the binder. The original, not a copy. My name was still on the spine, faded from fingerprints. Everything you'll ever need, I said, the same words I'd told the man who quit on his first day. The director smiled. We'll take good care of it. I nodded once. You'd better. I took the long way out, past the server room, humming steady, lights green, past the break area where someone had left half a muffin on the counter, past the bulletin board with the old company photo, a younger me barely visible at the back, half out of frame. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with heat. I walked across it slowly, the binder's absence like a missing limb. The air felt different, lighter, but strange. When I reached my car, I opened the glove compartment and took out a folded sheet of paper, my copy of the list. Just 1 page now, trimmed down to the first sentence I ever wrote. Before retiring, I wrote down everything I did. I unfolded it, smoothed the crease with my thumb, then refolded it and slipped it back into the glove box. Not for nostalgia, for proof that once it had all been mine to hold together. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from one of the new hires. Subject, Hey, Mr. Reeves, quick question. I smiled, read the first line. The binder mentioned something about job 42? Then closed the laptop. I didn't reply. Instead, I went outside. The sun was sharp, alive. My wife was planting tomatoes in the backyard. I knelt beside her, hands in the soil for the first time in years, and realized it felt almost exactly like work. Except this time, the earth didn't demand anything back. She looked up, brushing hair from her face. You done? Finally, I said. That night, the old alert phone, the one I hadn't turned on since leaving, buzzed on the kitchen counter. Reflex made me glance at it. Alert. Job 42 failed. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. The sound didn't bother me anymore. It wasn't my noise to fix. I switched the phone off, slid it into a drawer, and walked outside. The air was cool, the sky wide and mercifully silent. For the first time in 28 years, I didn't owe anyone an answer.